Greetings and Happy New Year. It's the 8th of January already. Time is truly flying. I welcome you, older visitors from last year and any new visitors to Spiritual Warriorship. We will be discussing from Bhakti Tirtha Swami's book Spiritual Warrior 3, and we worked on chapter 7, 12 qualities of spiritual warriorship. But before I go into that subject tonight, I want to give you something for the new year. I guess I'm not talking about resolutions. We all go there. But I found a greeting to me from Bhakti Tirtha Swami in The Beggar 3. And he wrote this to me on December 25th, 2001. For Mother Indrani, that's as we enter into a new year, we want to bring death to the false ego and full birth to our divine egos. Please keep your inner dialogue begging Guru and Krishna to free you from all remaining blocks. And this I want to offer as his greeting to all of you out there. And this was the beggar, false ego, the greatest enemy of the spiritual leader. So if you're having a problem with your false ego, get this beggar book. It'll help you. Now, he had one more sentence to me, and as I read it tonight, I had a realization. It says, this year, meaning the 2002 coming in, put more time into connecting with your spiritual family through the internet. And I'll tell you, I had been kind of feeling I wasn't really following those instructions so thoroughly because I haven't been in touch sometimes with the devotees or our group list. But my realization tonight is I am following that instruction because you're all the spiritual family, wherever you are and whomever you are. And I am on the internet, and so thank you, Gurudev. You pushed me till I finally got something going that you gave instructions for. So I hope those few words will help you. And if you're working with the qualities of a spiritual warrior, that shouldn't be too difficult if you work with determination. I got something else for the new year because so much goes on and we talk so much. But this was sent to me, and it's a quote from Bhakti Vinod. And I felt it might be a good thoughts to have since we're still at the beginning of the year. So let me read this to you. Quote from Srila Bhakti Vinod. Give up the shackles of matter slowly. Cultivate your spirit inwards. Be humble in yourself and learn to respect those who work towards spiritual attainments, no matter what their tradition. Do these with your heart, mind, and strength in the company of spiritual people alone, and you will see Krishna in no time. Spiritual cultivation is the main object of life. Do everything which helps it and abstain from doing anything that thwarts the cultivation of the spirit. Have a strong faith that Krishna God alone protects you and none else. Admit Him as your guardian. Do everything which you know that Krishna wishes you to do, and never think that you do a thing independently of the holy wish of Krishna. Do all that you do with humility. Always remember that you are a sojourner in this world, and you must be prepared for your own home. Do your duties and cultivate bhakti as a means to obtain the great end of life. Krishna Priti, love of God. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a comma there. Do your duties and collect bhakti as a means to obtain the great end of life, Krishna Priti, love of God. Employ your body, mind, and spirit in the service of the deity. Chant his name always. In all your actions, worship the great Lord. A glimpse into the life of Thakur Bhakti Vinod by Pandit Satkari Chattopadhyaya. Now, just hearing those words, for those who have been following the qualities of a spiritual warrior, sounds familiar. As I was reading through it, one came up, humility came up, mastering of the mind came up, fearlessness. It's really wonderful. Firm faith. So we've gotten some wonderful tools from Bhakti Tirtha Swami over the past few weeks. And if you're new or first time or not familiar, we're working from Spiritual Warrior 3, which is available at Krishna.com. And also, I believe you can get a Spiritual Warrior poster through a link there. So what are we talking about? Spiritual warriorship. Bhakti Tirtha Swami presented this concept of spiritual warriorship to help individuals to become grounded in understanding who they really are as spiritual beings. If you recall, in the first quality, mastery of the mind, he reminds us there that we are eternal beings. To also help us to cope with life in trying times, and we know they can become quite trying. To also help us use spiritual weapons to battle the tide of depression, anxiety, and feelings of hopelessness sweeping our society. And to also help persons develop an internal positive dialogue for making the mind your friend. And as I said, if you've been following, you see how those have been presented so nicely. And we're going to do a review tonight, and then I want to go over 2 or 3 questions and answers, because when he gave these lectures, every lecture he gave or seminar or workshop, he would have questions and answers at the end. And when I read these, I felt it would be a wonderful opportunity to hear. It may be questions that you have on your mind. So one more statement of him about spiritual warriors. He says, spiritual warriors are unconventional. And I thought of that for those of you, again, who have been studying and endeavoring to apply these qualities. If you've been getting funny looks or like, what's going on with you? That's all right. A spiritual warrior is unconventional. And he says we do not fight with conventional weapons. Huh? No more, you know the words that can out you this, you that. No, we're fighting with compassion. We're fighting with love. We're fighting with a sense of humility. Again, these are the qualities and they fit in. And he also says we do not fight on conventional battlegrounds. We're not going to go knock down the goalpost or something like that. What we're working with is consciousness. And as we cleanse and purify our consciousness and understand and apply these qualities in our lives, and then we're able to help others. And he says, and we do not fight for conventional objectives. We're fighting for helping others to know who they are as spiritual beings and to become free in this prison that we're in. Okay, so everybody's ready. You're all spiritual warriors. We're marching on into the new year. But let's just review. I did that with myself yesterday and this morning, and it was quite fascinating going through these again, because as I'm offering to you, I'm also imbibing and endeavoring to live them. He says to us, a true spiritualist must engage in battle, if only to avoid being consumed by the avalanche of ever-increasing impiety and materialism that is quickly engulfing the world. The spiritualist must engage in battle or be cheated of our spiritual inheritance. So this is an action-orientated teaching, seminar, talk, procedure, if you will, action-orientated. He also states, now how does it work as an action, or what do you have to do in your action? He states here, one sentence, if you are going to embark on a spiritual mission, especially in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, you must hone the arts of the spiritual warrior through sincere study and application. That's work, right? Because you're going to apply it in your life after studying. And the last part before I start, I keep saying I'm going to start reviewing. He states here about the spiritual warrior checklist, as he calls it. Do not leave home without it. This list supplies attributes you can aspire to and a barometer to measure your progress. Vigilant application of spiritual warfare may prove to be our very lifeline as our planet is gradually overtaken by negative forces. So let's start. Again, I am, as I've said before, endeavoring to interact, have a interpersonal relationship while looking into this camera, because I was just about to say, okay, tell me what's the first quality. And I would do that if I was in a class. Now I know you're all at home shouting it out, very good. But since I can't hear you, I have to visualize. But we're going to go through these, and I'm hoping that I will be able to also share some realizations I may have had, because with the time off, I realized I want to imbibe these in situations that come up and in talking to people. But the first quality we went through was sense control and mastery of the mind. And I can understand why he put that first. That is so important, the mastery of our mind. But the most important thing, I tried to just make note because I don't want to read the whole thing again, and I know you all are probably reading at home. But for me, what's important in this is needing a sense of regulation and focus. We must need to become regulating the mind and focusing it. And what does that mean? Regulation of the mind does what? It cuts down on the areas in which we can be attacked. I like one sentence. I like every sentence here, but one that I picked out: an active, progressive, devotional mind is a place where the Lord can focus and radiate transcendental messages and understanding. So it's not saying, be dull-minded. It means you're regulating that mind, but it's also active, but it's going to be active with higher knowledge and a higher understanding, and then the Lord can radiate through that and give you messages and understanding. That's exciting to know you don't have to be a slave to the mind. Another quote of his is, our real identity is that we are eternal beings, and it is important to think and act as eternal beings. Now, as you study these and move through these, you're seeing that thread is woven in all. That's an important key. And the other point where he emphasizes that is where he says, we are divine spirit souls, and we need to cultivate our higher faculties and experience the sublime ecstasy. So we have to work at that. I found myself more conscious of that mind drifting off sometimes, especially when I was trying to chant at times, and I could hear myself, and then all of a sudden I realized the mind was going into, what about later, or, oh, you're going to be back online with that those qualities. What do you know? Did you study? What you going to say? And I would find myself getting a little anxious, and it's like, wait a minute, you get out of here. Let me focus on what I'm on right now, and that'll work out. In fact, I had a challenge today. When I was doing these before, I had a folder, and each week I would have a quote in it or some of the papers that I would read to you. And I know I put those papers in a folder over 2 weeks ago, and so it was like, okay, let's pull out the folder so we can check and see if you wanted to go over any of those. And I could not find that folder. And for some reason, I allowed my mind to get in there with, if you don't find that folder, you won't know what to say. You're not going to say it right. It ain't going to be right. And, oh, I went through such a thing. And at some point, wait a minute. I had to talk that inner dialogue. I had to be careful with that. And I'd say, wait a minute. There's no need. I don't need that. I got the book, which is easy. It's got the words here, and I had to calm myself down. But it was a wonderful experience of not allowing my mind to take me into anxiety of what could happen, or what did I do, So this is an important quality of mastering the mind. And as he told us there, that the mind doesn't like change. And that's what we were about. With your chanting or your studying or even working with these 12 qualities of a spiritual warrior, we're about change. That's an important word since 2008, 2007. Change. But we're changing consciousness. So, that's it for the mind. I hope I had more, but let's keep going because I want to cover quite a bit today. What's number 2? Oh, you got it. Humility. He gave us 4 meanings for humility. But the one thing I like was his opening is that humility is not a sign of weakness. The reality is that humility is a powerful weapon. And we must discover the pure strength of humility. And then he goes on to give us the meaning. Humility means knowing there is so much we do not know. So much we still need to learn. Now this came in as the 11th quality about curiosity and enthusiasm in our growth. It is, I'm telling you, just going through these and reviewing to see how he weaves them in and out. And that's why it's important to, if you can, to study them and begin to try to apply them in our lives. He also says, humility means knowing there is a higher part of ourselves. And what did he tell us in Mastery of the Mind? Who we are, he told us, eternal beings, spirit, soul. So it's carrying over. If you missed it in that one, and then you get to the next, you say, make that connection. So humility means knowing there is a higher part of ourselves and being eager to awaken that part. And that again goes to the following qualities of perseverance and curiosity and enthusiasm. Humility means knowing that we are servants of the Supreme, children of God. We are. We're servants. He's not there to serve us. Although, as you study in the scriptures and sastras, we find he takes pleasure in serving us as we offer ourselves to him in love and devotion. And the 4th, he says, humility means recognizing who is doing the controlling and being dependent on this actual controller. Okay, you're not running the show. You think so. Get independence. I told you, did I tell you the time I realized I wasn't that independent? It was 2006. And I had made up my mind that I was going to Mayapur in February for my Guru Bhakti Tirtha Swami Samadhi opening in Mayapur. So I started out looking at tickets, and I knew I needed a traveling companion, and I was calling who's going, when you're going, where we could meet, and I was calling all the agencies, and my daughter's saying to me, you're not going, you can't go, don't tell me I can't go. Oh, and then she said, well, I won't help you. I said, don't worry, I got my charge card. That was before this crisis anyway. So I was getting this all together, the dates and time. But while I was doing that, my body was going through something. It's interesting, I've almost forgotten, but it wasn't helping me. And somewhere before I reserved the ticket or something, it went into a crisis, and I realized I could not make that trip to Mayapur. And I started crying. What? But what came to me is, you're not so independent. And I realized I had no independence because I was just being so fresh. I know, you know how you young folks are. Well, I was an old folk with my younger daughter being fresh, and I can do it myself. And it didn't work. And what I realized then, I had to truly begin to pray to the Lord. I have no independence. Help me to depend on you. And this is usually when we get to that point, when you can't do what you think you want to do. So if we're using these qualities and knowing and depending on the actual controller, we may not have such a painful moment. The next quality is, I got you, you're right, fearlessness. Now this one I've had to work with, and even up to today I realize I feel I have to, I don't know, study it more, surrender to it more. He says, a spiritual warrior is naturally fearless. What need is there to shuffle our feet when we are backed up by a supreme power? How can we be intimidated when our actual origin is divine? See, that goes back to the first quality. Master of the Mind, he tells us we're eternal, divine, spirit, soul. So, as I said, it's weaving through all of these. When we realize these things, there are no reasons to hold on to various crutches because there is no cause for insecurity. Reviewing this today, and honestly facing myself, as he tells us, we have to be honest with ourselves and look in of why I was going through this anxiety, why I was scrambling to find the notes from last year. And this is a new year to start new. I realized somewhere I haven't quite grasped, for want of a better word, internalized, imbibed, that I'm backed up by the supreme power. Realization. And just back to the meaning of humility, where it talks about recognizing who is doing the controlling. So if he's doing the controlling, and I'm letting him do the controlling, and he don't want me to use last year's notes. But I went through anxiety. So this fearlessness I'm still working on, and we need to, as Bhakti Tirtha Swami, we have to look inside. We have to be very alert as to what's going as we're moving through. But the realizations will come. The next is truthfulness. The fourth tool is truthfulness. We should be so fixed and steady. I like that word, fixed. You fixed up. You're steady, right? We should be so fixed and steady in our realizations of the Supreme. Not people down the street, not the folks next door, but the Supreme. and in our love and compassion for others, that we can speak the truth even to an enemy. This is one that can take some study. But he gives us a tip here. I marked it out. I don't want to read the whole thing. Today, he says, the world community is severely depleted of wisdom. One reason for this is that people do not compete with a sense of honor or a sense of respect for themselves and their opponents. They consistently cheat in combat, whether this is in the mental or physical arena. Few people fight fairly, and even if someone does defeat another fairly, the defeated party wants to bribe the judge, challenge the decision, or discredit the opponent. But he says the best antidote for this problem is truthfulness, coupled with humility. We should truly admit defeat if defeated, then earnestly work to better ourselves. Okay? The next is compassion and pridelessness. And I want to keep moving because we're going to get to the questions. Compassion and pridelessness. Compassion means we have real love for others. But of course, it starts with real love for ourselves as who we really are. And that pridelessness, the pride we know is there if we are continually looking for a pat on the back. If we're constantly looking for a pat on the back and for people to like us, will overshadow our concern for what is right and proper, causing us to lose our higher principles. It's better to be right than it is to be honored. So he tells us love is the greatest weapon. Its greatest enemies are lust and greed. When there is proper love and compassion, these things will not distract us. If we are true loving beings, then our love will extinguish all things unnatural and hostile, because we will vibrate with such intense energy. Think of that. Next, material exhaustion and disinterest in material rewards. He's telling us, reminding us here that we cannot become God conscious. Now, as a spiritual warrior, we are working and fighting the battle from a sense of knowing who we are and being connected as a spirit soul to God. So we're conscious, more conscious. But if we think that this material life is the all in all, we'll have a problem becoming really God conscious. What he says is we need to literally reach complete disgust with day-to-day life. It doesn't mean that you run away and you hide and you give up your responsibilities. No, you have a family, you have things. But you don't allow the day-to-day activity to be the all in all and almost worship it. You become more mindful and alert. And this is important. He tells us our present thoughts and actions produce our future. Okay? So check yourself out. What are you thinking? What are your actions? Is this what you want to carry on for the next week, the next month, the next year? And we want to work on our escape to our true freedom, to get out of this prison. What's the next one? No idle time. Oh, I had a wonderful time with this one. It made me sort of check out. It's interesting, I had started writing in my journal last year. I can't remember, I didn't start back with it. I don't know, maybe I started the first of the year, but I haven't written recently. But I'm really trying to be more mindful of how I'm using my time in serving the Lord. And what I found, I have read this section and shared this with many devotees or friends on the phone. A strong spiritual warrior realizes the importance of using time wisely. We must remember every encounter, every moment is an opportunity to be uplifted or to uplift someone else. That's your work. That's your job. That's your mission. Every moment is a chance to be an example of divinity. Every moment is a chance to learn a new lesson and further develop an old lesson. Every moment has a purpose, and a spiritual warrior will make each moment work for the Supreme Lord. And I'm just checking my clock here to see how many more do we have to go. The 8th is patience and selflessness. He says, we are at war, and we must realize that we must realize whatever it will take to be God conscious, we want it. We must have it now. We cannot wait another lifetime. The next is firm faith. Faith is necessary in everything. It is not a matter of being Presbyterian, Episcopalian, Muslim, or Buddhist. It's a matter of how much we're following the laws of God and how much faith we have in God's potency. We need to see the Lord's hand in everything, from the simplest thing to the most complicated. The next quality, perseverance. A true warrior never wants the war to end. Don't forget, we're in a non-conventional war. A true warrior is relentless and always ready to continue. We must be prepared to continually evaluate ourselves, regroup, and adopt strategies to help us move beyond what may seem to be defeat. The next is curiosity and enthusiasm to learn. That's the 11th. Is being curious and having enthusiasm about learning and growing. We must start each day curious about what tests we will encounter, what lessons we will learn, what lives we will connect with. We must take each day as a fresh, new experience and another chance to serve the Lord better. Isn't that exciting? You get up in the morning and say, okay, Krishna, what's on for today? Let's get it on. I'm ready. And you walk out the door and God says, what's wrong with you? Why are you looking so happy? Hare Krishna, keep on going. Or you get to work and there's a big problem. But how can I learn from this? Try to remember that one thing. Ask the first, how can I learn and grow from this? Because that's what your life is about. And the final, surrender to divine will. All of the previous tools, he tells us, help us to prepare the spiritual warrior for this important step. For a spiritual warrior, surrender is actually a victory as long as we're surrendering to God. As we sincerely try to live a spiritual life and better ourselves, God will reciprocate tenfold. And one more closer here. He says, simply reading about the tools puts us in higher consciousness. So the reading and the hearing is always important. We need to evaluate our relationship with God and constantly take inventory to see whether we are catering to our material self or if we're acting in accordance with our understanding of God's will for us. And he says, this is not easy to do. But spiritual warriors try their best and always look for ways to do better each day, each situation, each moment. Okay, hope that revived you from the celebration of the incoming new year and help us to be ready to move forward. Now, I want, as I said earlier, one or two questions after this. Listen, it may just be on your mind one right now. The first one, how does one develop the consciousness of being totally dependent on the Lord? Sometimes people think they have that consciousness, but then something happens and they realize they are really not in that consciousness. Sound familiar, huh? How do you move beyond the false presumption that you are totally dependent on the Lord and actually become totally dependent? This is the answer from Bhakti Tirtha Swami. The Lord will give you many tests to qualify that dependency. We do not have to artificially feel humble or force ourselves to be humble. We simply have to look honestly at what little control we really have. If thinking we have control, we decide not to eat any food for a month, we will see how weak the body becomes. If we decide not to drink water, we will surely die. We are dependent on such little things. We have to rest the body. We have to take the body to the toilet. So many things. No matter how much money or power we have, sickness and death are still there. If we are honest, it is not difficult to feel humble and dependent. What came to my mind? That's when we kind of get frightened, you know. Don't have control over these things, and yet that sort of, instinct, desire to control, then we panic. What do I do? How am I going to do this? Why is this happening? But what he's saying here, if you're honest, it's not difficult to feel humble, because if you're making your connection, you know who you are. If you've been going through this, you're knowing who is the controller, who's driving the chariot. Then you can kind of step back and let him drive. We just have to look at how we are controlled by higher forces and what little power we have over such things. We sometimes talk about hurricanes, floods, and earth changes. People spend thousands and sometimes millions of dollars on their businesses and estates. Yet with one disaster, everything is gone. People will be in good health, follow a good diet, and exercise. But then, one day, have a heart attack. It happens every day. Every day someone who is rich goes bankrupt. Every day someone discovers they have a chronic disease, AIDS, hepatitis, cancer, heart failure, or so many maladies. Every single day. Every minute somebody is dying. We are not in control. But obviously someone is, because there is order in the universe. Trying to become more God conscious puts us in harmony with that order. When somebody has all the power and all the control, we want to be their friend and be close to them, right? Hey, that guy, he knows somebody downtown. Maybe I can get a big job. Let me go get over there and get friendly with him. Come to dinner. Here's the thing, So here we want to be closer with that somebody who has all the power and all the control. That is wise, he says. To be an enemy of that person or work against that person is foolish. It is just a matter of realizing how little control we have, then seeing the need to be protected and cared for. We must realize the necessity of being under the care of the Lord. And this just takes us back to Bhagavad Gita, where we know and we're told the Lord is a person. Question. I understand the need for controlling the mind, but sometimes my mind loses the battle against negativity. I do not like to admit it, but sometimes my best is not good enough. Is all of spiritual life like an arm wrestling match? Is grace one of the ingredients in getting back to God's kingdom? The answer by Bhakti Tirtha Swami. By all means. In every bona fide faith, the grace of God is integral, not only to our deliverance, but to our very existence. We should not forget that our stomachs digest food by the grace of God. Our eyes see by the grace of God. Our vocal cords work by the grace of God. Of course, grace is key, particularly in our re-entry to the spiritual kingdom. But God's grace comes in numerous ways, and very often it comes to us as a formula. God gives us the recipe for success and then waits to see how intensely we work to apply it and feel gratitude for it. The divine couple is the witness of all activities. They specifically watch how we treat others and ourselves. It is said that the female aspect of God is so humble and compassionate that she frequently recommends souls to the male aspect, who is more of a natural disciplinarian, asking him to give his favor. Mother, Father, God are amazingly merciful, but they do not want us to be miserly with ourselves and only look to our temporary interests with no thoughts to our eternal situation. Nor do they want us to hurt others with our arrogant sarcasm or abuse. We have to come up to a certain level where the grace of God can shower upon us. The Supreme Personality of Godhead's mercy is actually greater than His law. The laws are there, and we should obey them. But God's mercy is even greater. That mercy is usually manifested through bona fide agents of the Lord. The prophets are carriers, just like a postman delivers a package. If a postman brings you $1 million check, you may hug him out of spontaneous gratitude, and to a large extent that is valid. After all, the postman had to cover a lot of ground. He also had to qualify himself and pass certain exams to become entrusted with your personal mail. This is even more true for the carrier of God's message. Everyone is actually a carrier, but some of us are not yet aware of the treasures we have access to. The prophets are generally those who have woken up a little earlier. When we're asleep, it's like being tied up. It is not easy to untangle ourselves when we are bound with ropes. It is the duty of the Lord's messengers to wake others up on the Lord's behalf. We should never feel we have the ability to escape this prison on our own, because we will tend to rely too much on our own limited knowledge and intelligence. Every major world scripture emphasizes that God helps those who help themselves. We should therefore try to get the grace of God by qualifying ourselves according to the formulas He has provided. This means treating others cordially. It also entails being non-violent in the truest sense of the word, and this means sharing whatever higher knowledge we have with others who are ready for it. Self-restraint is also a factor, because every major scripture urges us to be humble, serene, and equiposed. We do not need to be docile to give up our individuality or give up our individuality. We should develop enough strength to tolerate things. The person who masters tolerance can actually convert negative energy and elevate it, because it takes real strength to avoid becoming aggressive when met with aggression. It takes strength to refrain from being obnoxious or getting angry and following suit when someone attacks you. It takes even more strength to maintain loving consciousness when you are under attack. That kind of strength invokes great mercy and blessings from the Supreme Lord. I'm enjoying reading this. I hope it's coming across to you. There's so much he's given, and Prabhupada says in some of his writings, what's the difficulty? It's really about getting ourselves who we think we are out the way and knowing who we are and who we're connected to. There's one more question. Do I have time for that? Yeah? All right. I'm somehow reading these questions, I feel I'm asking them, and it may be on your mind. This one is interesting. In my work environment, I am frequently caught up in conversations that do not revolve around spirituality. In fact, it would be frowned upon. I try to model, at some level, humility and patience. I try to emanate good feelings. But as you were talking, I was thinking about a conversation I was caught up in at the end of last week. Someone was carrying on about some completely mundane activity, and I could not hang up, walk out, or disappear. In that type of situation, is the mindfulness just in my own self, is the mindfulness just in my own self to be clear about God consciousness, or is there something more I can do to protect myself and to convey to the other person there's another way of being? Now that, I'm sure, is familiar if you're out there in that material world dealing with a lot of material energy. This is the answer. Mindfulness does not mean to be rude. Instead, it means to not commit violence or have violence committed against you. When people are throwing harsh words at you or around you, this is violence. When you accept that, you are supporting that violence. If somebody we love and care about, and we want to care about everyone, engages in violent, destructive activities, we should try to do something to help. If they speak harshly about someone, we can just turn the conversation around by asking, yes, and how do you think we can help? What can we do to make a difference? You have not been rude or condescending. You have taken the conversation to another level and changed the atmosphere. Body language has an effect also. When people are speaking some kind of nonsense and they see that you are hanging on to their every word, you are going to get more and more. You are feeding them. On the other hand, when they realize that you are really not into it, but simply smiling and tolerating their nonsense, you are letting them know, I have to go. I remember years ago when I used to work at my workstation at the hospital when I was in New York. I had a sign up, let something good be said. And it was interesting. I just didn't allow people to come and start gossiping, criticizing, and judging. And then at some point I wouldn't even answer. I would just point to the sign and go back to my work. And after a while, people began to realize you don't go there with a lot of junk because she's not going to tolerate it. And I wasn't being violent. I wasn't being harsh. Rough. I just let something good be said. So we do, again, talk about controlling. We can control our environment from a higher level. And this is what Bhakti Tirtha Swami is saying. He finishes, it is very important that we be careful about how we use our time and how we interact with others. It is our duty to be our brother and sister's keeper. It is our duty to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. It is our duty to do things that will constantly make a difference and that will help the well-being of that person. It is unfortunate when someone does not try to help when there is a chance to elevate the people they have contact with. We must remember that helping people does not involve lowering ourselves to whatever level they are on. That is violence to ourselves and also to them, and helps no one. Spiritual warriors are always engaged in strategies for trying to genuinely help as many people as possible while keeping ourselves fit and equipped. And that ends chapter 7 of Spiritual Warrior 3, Solace for the Heart in Difficult Times, chapter 7, 12 Qualities of a Spiritual Warrior. And with this review tonight and these questions, I hope and pray you've received something. I know I'm working on myself more. That will move you through this new year, this new life, this new you, to enliven and enrich your environment. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. Any questions? If not.
Bhagwan Mohan Das, he says, would you please convey apologies for me not calling Mother Indrani since I've been home, and offer my sincere thanks for all the time she sacrificed counseling me after my accident that put me in the hospital by Krishna's arrangement for the whole past month.
Hari Bol, Bhuvan Mohan. I'm happy that you're home and in the healing process, and you're a fantastic spiritual warrior, and just keep applying and imbibing these tools that our spiritual master has given, and let's keep working on this battlefield. Thank you for your kind words.
And Parameshwar says, Haribol, welcome back. And Bhakti Carol says, I need to hear this right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Parameshwar. I know you're healing nicely. My prayers have been with you. And welcome back, Carol. I'm glad you heard something that you can use. That's it? Okay. We will be back next week. And I'm looking forward to going over 4 principles of community building. Bhakti Tirtha Swami stressed that so much. And then we're going to be seeing where we'll go from there. But I thank everybody and pray you will put these, apply them in your life, and just see how it works. And if you notice change or any wonderful experiences, maybe next time put it in the chat room and share with others how working with these qualities brings about a change in all our lives and our environment. Hare Krishna. All glory, Srila Prabhupada.